before we go any further, there's something that I've got to share with all of you. It's a confession. I don't want anyone to be shocked, and I hope that after I say this, no one will leave. But years ago, I was not the fashion icon that you see before you today. People did not call me and consult with me about what they should wear. People did not call me up and say, "What shade of black are you wearing today, Randy?" But back in those days, when I was younger, I was always searching for that special outfit, for that one perfect item of clothing that would magically make me not only look good, but feel good and feel confident. And I was convinced that if I found it, I would, first of all, be totally irresistible to women. And let's be honest, probably most men too. That knock that you hear at the door, why, it must be Sydney Sweeney in her American Eagle jeans. So one day, I was leafing through a catalog. Now, this was back in the days when companies would print catalogs and they would mail them to you so that you could then throw them into the garbage. Well, there I was, holding this catalog over the trash bin, getting ready to throw it in, when I saw it. It was the perfect shirt. I looked at it, and according to the description, it was soft, it was perfectly fitted, and sure to make any man look like he had just stepped out of a Vanity Fair photo shoot with Scarlett Johansson and Keira Knightley. So I decided I had to have it. Now, I don't like to shop, and particularly I don't like getting anything that I haven't tried on first, because who knows if that shirt or shoe will actually fit you. But then as I read down the page, I saw it. It was right there. It said, "One size fits all." There it is. I knew that as he pointed at me, he was trying to tell me something. So I ordered it, and I dreamed of the moment that it would come and I would be literally transformed. Now, it did arrive. I tore open the package, I slipped it on, and then I discovered a painful truth. One size fits all apparently did not include me. The sleeves were too short, the chest too tight, and the luxurious fabric felt a little like fine-grade sandpaper. So I had a terrible realization then. One size fits all just might be a lie. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the one size fits all idea isn't just confined to clothing. If you think about it, we see it everywhere. It's in diet fads, it's in political ideologies, financial strategies, and yes, religion and spirituality. People love to tell us, if you just do things my way, your life will indeed be wonderful. I think all of us have had an experience with this idea. I remember I grew up in a small Southern Baptist church in South Georgia, and I have to tell you, it was definitely a one-size-fits-all kind of place. One way of believing, there was one moral code, and there was one sure road to heaven. Now, if you didn't fit, you might be a little bit uncomfortable, and you might even get cast out if you talk too much. And that's the essence of one-size-fits-all thinking. Do it my way, or you are wrong. There's not enough room in the box for questioning, much less doing things your own way. Now, I went along with all of this for a while, But eventually I began to realize that spiritual truth just doesn't work like that. And let me give you an example. The 19th century Hindu mystic Ramakrishna said, God has made different religions to suit different aspirations, times, and countries. All doctrines are only so many paths, but a path is by no means God himself. I think that the divine meets each of us where we are, and the infinite cannot be confined to only one practice. But of course, you would never know this from listening to a TV preacher on Sunday morning or the words of a weekend seminar leader. I mean, if you think about it, even in the world of self-help books, the message is often the same, and they all say a version of this. I used to be a total mess, but then I found this method, and now I am totally awesome. And if you buy my plan, sign up for my seminar, you will be awesome too. And it can all be obtained for 12 easy payments. But I don't think life works like that. The deepest truths are all universal, but the experience of them is always personal. Life is too big, life is too complex, and too different to be contained in one size fits all. Think about it this way. Consider an acorn. Inside it is the blueprint for an oak tree, but the oak that emerges depends on where that acorn falls, the soil it falls into, the sunlight, the storms, the droughts, everything that it experiences. And the same divine pattern is in every seed, but its expression is always totally unique. Totally unique, totally different. And so it is with each one of us, I think. Spiritual truth is universal, but how it expresses through you depends on the soil of your experience. What are your talents? What are your wounds? What kind of courage can you conjure up? And what is your willingness to grow? The seed is one, but I think the expression is always infinite. Ernest Holmes, who was the founder of this teaching, once wrote, "Do not adopt the letter of my teaching, but the spirit. And you will find, as I did, that you will begin to formulate a system that is true for you." Now, he urged us to prove spiritual principles for ourselves, to sort of test them in the laboratory of our lives. And it is only in those laboratories that we can really determine what works and what doesn't. Now, my first teacher in Atlanta was the Reverend Paul Gagne, and he would close every Sunday talk with this expression: take what resonates with you and leave the rest. I really like that. Now, don't let anyone else tell you what to believe. Prove it for yourself. And I think that invitation really kind of honors your own divine intelligence. It says, you are the authority of your own life. You are the authority of your own soul. One size fits all, I think, is always a compromise. And it's just a box that is going to restrict you if you think about it. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't sign up for classes, that you shouldn't join a community, that you should even follow a guru if you feel called to do that. Just remember that the experience, every experience that you have, is just part of the path. It's not the destination itself. Yet, I think it's also kind of easy to buy into religions, to philosophies, to what you hear on Sunday morning TV. Um, all of these philosophies and theories that claim to fit everyone because they say you're just like everyone else. This is the only way to think, to be. And if you do this, this is all that you need. Step inside our box and you will be happy. And I imagine you will be for a while if you follow along with that. Whether it's religion or whether it's financial advice on TikTok, we're told that these ideas will fit you and everybody else. But I'm here to suggest to you they don't. And at this point, I feel I need to say you're lucky if that shirt you bought doesn't fit too well. Far too often, I think, you must avoid those who want to take advantage of you while you're inside their box. I mean, if you think about it, how many times have you heard about a church, mega church leader who has abused his congregation, a seminar leader that has abused his participants and taken advantage of them financially or otherwise? You always have to be on the lookout for that. Now, the author and historian Mitch Horowitz once said, when you're walking the spiritual path in a world of sometimes advantage takers, occasional frauds, and not unfrequently unprepared students who call themselves teachers, you must arm yourself with one vital question. Does this person deserve my trust? Your spiritual search must be exquisitely consensual and voluntary, or it is nothing at all. That is so true. But we also need to be honest as well. When you get ready to abandon one-size-fits-all thinking, and after discovering they doesn't fit you anymore, you may have some issues there because it can have consequences. When you change, you also change the world around you. And I have to say that can be a little bit challenging because there are people in your life, whether they be family, whether they be friends, co-workers, bosses, whomever, who do not want to change. And if they don't want to change, they certainly do not want you to change either. They do not want you to leave the box. They do not want you to finally cast off that shirt and find one that fits. And when that happens, it can get a little bit messy. Stuart Wilde, who is the great metaphysical author and philosopher, put it bluntly about what happens when you stop being in the box, and what happens to those around you when you step out of it. He said, either they will be different or they will be gone. Are you ready for that? Mitch Horowitz, whom I quoted earlier, is one of the country's foremost historians of New Thought and other spiritual movements. And he knows a thing or two about what happens when you step out of the box. Now, he's written a lot of bestsellers that are worth reading if you want to understand the spiritual history of America. So, over his career, he was frequently invited to speak at New Thought and New Age conferences and centers, and even raise funds for some organizations. And Mitch is a really open-minded and creative and courageous searcher. He's personally explored many of the spiritual traditions that he writes about, even some very unpopular ones. When he wrote positively about modern Satanism, and even went so far as to muse that he agreed with some of its teachings, it caused quite an uproar. Many of the organizations that had invited him to speak withdrew their invitations. So within a movement that bills themselves as being open-minded, suddenly was revealed as being not quite so open-minded. Mitch was effectively canceled in some quarters because he didn't fit in the box, but he also didn't back down. He never disavowed any of his beliefs. And by the way, what Mitch saw as satanic, he saw in the same way that the Romantic poets did. Satanism as the force of rebellion, radical self-expression, artistic freedom, assertion, and revolution. In other words, he didn't fit into a lot of boxes. And speaking about when he was, kind of disavowed and canceled, he said this: "The simple truth about free expression is threats to it are varied, and unless free inquiry is thoughtfully and critically practiced, can just be reduced to a slogan. Free expression that doesn't fit into one size all gets tested, especially during what I and many others call threshold times." Now let's talk about what that means and why I think it's important. The executive coach, Wei-Ju Rowe, describes threshold times as those in-between places, moments of transformation. Behind us is what we once knew. Ahead is a not yet realized future. Thresholds are doorways between what was and what is yet to be. Now these can be very uncomfortable places. They can be uncertain, even painful, and they ask us to surrender the familiar without yet seeing what is new. One-size-fits-all thinking doesn't prepare you for times like this. I remember one of my first big thresholds. Early in my career, I was laid off from my job. Overnight, I lost my rhythm, my identity, my community, and most important of all, my paycheck. So in the days after that, I would wake up every morning with a knot in my stomach and wonder, what was I going to do? I didn't know what was next, but I came to realize that I couldn't go back. And that's the essence of a threshold moment. You can't return to what was, but you can't yet see what is coming. And yet in that in-between time, we can find fertile ground. And that moment, it pushed me to imagine something better. I missed the job that I had been forced to leave behind, but then I began to think, what else is there? And eventually, I did find a job that was more fulfilling, that had new duties, brought me in contact with new people, and best of all, I had a bigger paycheck, significantly bigger than the one I had had before. But I really think that the real change was internal. I think that I rediscovered that I could trust life and realized that an ending wasn't really the end. It was something that led to a new beginning. Now we all have, I think, these threshold moments. It could be the end of a relationship, it can be a health challenge, it could be the loss of a loved one. It could even be a spiritual awakening that makes you realize old beliefs no longer fit. And they call us all, I think, to shed the one-size-fits-all versions of who we are and grow into something that is truer, that is larger, and most of all, is freer. Now, right now, in this country of ours, our nation, maybe even humanity itself, I think, is standing on a threshold. If you look around, you may hardly recognize the world that you're in. Institutions that we used to trust are changing. Some are even collapsing. Technology is destroying jobs at an unprecedented pace, and in reshaping relationships and even our sense of what it means to be human. And don't get me started about politics, because it is definitely polarized. Old ways are done, but the new ones haven't emerged. Now, I know at first we tend to want to resist all of this. We tell ourselves things will go back to normal after we get the next job, after the next relationship, after the next election. Everything will be fine. But deep down we know there is no going back. That's because I think each one of us is being invited into a new consciousness, a new way of thinking, a new way even perhaps of being human. We just have to become quiet, to open our minds, and listen. Listen to what is taking shape. Now, the great rock legend David Bowie, I think, said it best. Tomorrow belongs to those who can hear it coming. Now, Bowie was always listening to what was coming, and he was always changing, finding new ways to express new ideas. He constantly created new stage personas, ranging from Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars to the Thin White Duke, and he constantly reinvented himself. He never let the world's or his fans' ideas of him become a cage. He became one of the most influential artists in pop music because he kept evolving. Now, I want you to ask yourself, does your spiritual practice, does your church, does your community, does the teaching that you're pursuing, does it encourage you to become what only you can be? Does it encourage you to become your version of Ziggy or the Duke? Are you ready to embrace change? Because when you're ready to embrace change, change comes much easier. Now, it's also important to know these thresholds that you are confronting, that you're in the middle of, are not punishments. They are invitations to transformation. May not seem that way at the time. It certainly didn't for me. But looking back, I can see that they were. Because they are asking you to become a new version of yourself, to evolve. So when everything familiar starts to fall away, remember, life isn't falling apart. It could very well be falling into place. So how do you prepare for these threshold moments, those times when one size fits all answers no longer serve us? Well, I'd like to share with you some spiritual practices, some of which you'll be familiar with, maybe some not, that I believe that if you embrace them, they will strengthen your resilience and deepen your awareness during times of change. Now, the first of these is daily silence or meditation. Spend at least 10 minutes or however long you can manage in stillness, and let go of fixing or figuring out. Listen for what is coming. Thresholds require spaciousness to hear the whispers of what is new. Do affirmative prayer or spiritual mind treatment, and use prayer not as a form of pleading, but as a form or method of aligning. Declare that divine intelligence is guiding you every step of the way, from the next step to the last, even if you can't see it. Try some journaling. Write daily about what's ending, what's uncertain, and what's emerging. Clarity comes through you. It does not come to you. Adopt a gratitude practice. This is, I have found to be incredibly valuable. Try to list 3 or more things a day that you're grateful for, even in the midst of uncertainty. Because gratitude roots you in abundance, and an abundance mindset, and dissolves fear. Also, do some spiritual study. Read in teachings that inspire you, whether it's Holmes or Butterworth or Thich Nhat Hanh or Marianne Williamson, Rumi, whomever speaks to you. Notice the words that resonate with you, and when they do, make them your own. Community and connection. Don't become isolated. When something happens to you, share your experiences with your trusted friends, with your prayer partners, with those in your spiritual community that you trust. Thresholds are always easier to cross with someone else. Creative expression. And this is one that I think we don't necessarily hear a lot about, but I think it is immensely important to be creative in some way. You can paint, you can sing, you can dance, you can write, you can carve, you can whittle, you can build, but create something, create anything, because creativity is divine energy. Some theologians say that God is the name of creativity, and that is divine energy in motion. Being creative will open a channel for new life to flow through you. Now, open your mind and do the work. You'll find that spiritual growth is not about finding the perfect philosophy that fits everyone. It's about tailoring a truth that fits you. Take what resonates with you and leave the rest. Because when you stop trying to squeeze into someone else's spiritual shirt, you'll discover what your soul, I think, has always known. No one-size-fits-all religion, doctrine, or practice will ever be large enough to contain your magnificence. The one spirit, the one mind, doesn't make copies. It only makes originals. The more we live from that awareness, I think, the more we realize that we were never really meant to fit in. We were meant to expand. So when you find yourself standing in a threshold, uncertain and uncomfortable, remember this: the universe is tailoring a new garment just for you, just for your soul, and it will be one that fits perfectly. And as you step forward, trust that life is always your size.